Today I'm going to be showing you how to make official looking documents for your homebrew to step up your DM game. Greetings gamers, I'm Anto and I'm here to teach you how to actually enjoy life. And after my video on making a campaign setting guide, a whole bunch of you wanted to look at my process for designing better looking homebrew documents. So let's dive into it. This video is sponsored by the Deck of Rumours, now on Kickstarter. More on them later. There are a bunch of different ways for you to design homebrew PDFs that mimic the official style. Whether you're doing it for your personal game or looking to release something publicly on a site like DM's Guild or DriveThruRPG. Mimicking that style of the official material is a really useful way to help kind of sell your homebrew to your players. If it looks like the official material, it's easier for the players to accept it as a legitimate addition to the game rather than just a half-baked idea you've scribbled on a napkin. Now, of course, you don't have to go into this depth. A well-written Word document will be sufficient, but I found that taking the time to make something that looks good really helps the players connect with whatever it is that you've made. So let's head over to the PC and get started. To start with, the two most popular options online are Binder and Homebrewery, and they both work in pretty much the same way. You have an area of code on the left of the screen where you enter the information, and you see a real-time preview of the finished product on the right-hand side of the screen. These are both great options that have made designing documents in the style of the Player's Handbook super accessible, but they require a little bit of technical knowledge to work around the code, and you don't have as much full flexibility to be able to move things around on the page in real time. If you've got some light homebrewing to do, or if you want to make a one-off project, these are great options though, and they take away the guesswork of the design side of things. If you want something more sustainable or for a more ambitious project, these probably aren't going to be the best options for you. So where do you go to find the right tools to make better looking homebrew documents? Well, in my opinion, the best place for resources and the first place to go to when you're ready to move away from Binder and Homebrewery is the UnearthedArcana subreddit. This subreddit is dedicated to making homebrew creations, and they have an entire resource page filled with information, including a link to a Google Drive folder which contains almost everything you need to know to get started making your own fancy PDF. Inside this folder, there are templates for Word, Photoshop, InDesign, GIMP, and more to give you a great jumping off point for making these homebrew documents. The folder also contains open source fonts similar to those used in the official products, and a whole suite of graphics such as page footers, backgrounds, and stains. If you don't own any design software, the Word template that's in this folder is a great way to give yourself a little more control and options versus Binder or Homebrewery, but to make the most of the resources in this folder, you're going to want to use something that's a little bit more powerful. The standard options for this is going to be Adobe Photoshop and InDesign, and if you own those programs, you'll find templates available in that folder. But the Adobe suite is super expensive, and if you're looking for an alternative, I highly recommend the Affinity suite by Serif. Affinity Publisher, Designer, and Photo are replacements for InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop, and they work together in much the same way with you being able to send projects between the three programs with the click of a button. This video is not about the Affinity suite, but I do highly recommend you check them out. Download the trials and have a play around with them because they really are powerful pieces of software. I use the Affinity Publisher suite for my homebrew documents, so that's what we're going to look at to see how I set things up. Now, I actually have a template already set up with all my settings dialed in, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to make a really quick run through of how to set up one of those templates. The first thing we need to do is set up a new project, which means deciding on a couple of things up front. The first thing that you want to decide on is page size. And this is really important because if you decide on printing your project, especially if you want to get it professionally printed, you're going to need to choose a page size that's supported by your printer. Over here in the UK, the default page size is A4. So if I were to make a document in US letter size, for example, it would probably cost me like twice as much to print because it's not a common size here. We're going to dive into printing later on because a lot of you had questions about that, but a great starting point is checking out the options on DriveThruRPG and following kind of their sizing guide. Next, you want to set up your margins. I go with an all-round margin of 20mm and an inside margin of 25, just so that I make sure that if I've got a lot of pages, I don't lose any real estate in that margin. Finally, you want to set up your bleed. This is an area specified by a printing house that makes sure the ink goes all the way to the edge of the page and you don't end up with kind of like white edges going all around the page unless that's something you want. Once the document is set up, you can get to work on the master page. I like to turn on facing pages so I can see a dual spread for when I'm designing master pages, but that's up to you. Now in Affinity Publisher, you can get to the master page by clicking on the Pages option in the left toolbar and then selecting Master Pages. Anything you put on the master page is going to appear on every single page, and in most software like this, you can set up multiple master pages to give you even more flexibility. Now to set up my master page, I'm going to use some of the assets from the UnearthedArcana folder, and you can see here in Affinity Publisher, I have an assets bar in that left toolbar where I can drag assets. This makes them available in all of my projects, and it really speeds up the creation process because I can just drag things in there to use on multiple projects. So I'm going to drag this parchment texture onto the master page and then bring the folio design down here into the bottom of the page as well. Now you can see I've got a couple of pictures saved in my assets bar, and one of them is the color chart for the player's handbook style. I'm going to use this throughout the process, but for now I just want to grab the page number color and go ahead and insert some page numbers onto my master page. Once that's done, the basic master page is finished and we can finish setting up the document. Before we talk about perhaps the most important part of my setup process, I want to tell you about my Patreon, where you can find a huge selection of game aids and supplement material to help improve your game. At the $5 tier, you'll get access to things like one-page adventures to inspire your next session, NPC cards to draw on when the players suddenly ask what the guard's name is, and a whole bunch of other resources to make your life as a dungeon master easier. Every dollar pledged helps me make these videos bigger and better, and I've got some huge projects coming up made possible by my lovely patrons. So head to the link in the description and check it out. Thanks. I love you. The next step is, in my opinion, the most important part of the whole process, and that's setting up your style. If you plan on making multiple homebrew documents, setting up text styles in your template is going to make your life so much easier and really speed up your process. Now, styles allow you to define the font, the spacing, the color, and the behavior of specific text. In my template, I've got styles set up for all of my headings, my body text, and even for information boxes that I can insert into the text body without messing up the flow. The UnearthedArcana folder has suggestions on sizing, colors, and fonts that you can use to mimic the player's handbook and monster manual styles if you're interested in that. If you make your own style, I recommend putting together a picture that kind of includes all the colors and the sizes, so that you can drag that into your assets bar or save it on your computer so you can kind of reference it when needed. That's really going to speed things up. Once we've got all the text sorted, save the document as a template, and then you can use that as the starting point for your future projects, which will save you so much time in the long run, especially if you do a lot of work. And then it's just a matter of filling it in, writing out all your text. And once all your text is written, it's time to talk pictures. Now, one of the most common questions I see people ask when it comes to making kind of fancy homebrew documents for themselves is where to get art. Fortunately, Wizards of the Coast has a really pretty comprehensive and generous fan content policy, which I will link below with everything else. This basically means as long as what you're making is freely available to anyone, you're free to pretty much use all of Wizards of the Coast art, which includes art from the D&D books and from Magic the Gathering. The website, The Art of Magic the Gathering, is a great place to get full page pieces, and D&D Beyond is a great resource for downloading the kind of PNG splash pieces to put inside the text. However, if you want to charge for your work, you're probably going to want to look at some other options. Now, if you're just selling on DM's Guild, for example, and only on DM's Guild, there are a whole bunch of art packs you can download for free, which cover art from previous editions, and you can use those on anything on DM's Guild, but only on DM's Guild. Both DM's Guild and Drive-Thru-RPG have a lot of stock art options that will let you fill up your homebrew with art really affordably and legally, which is really important. But if you've got the funds, I really suggest that you try and support your favorite artists with commissioning custom pieces. The fantasy artists, hungry artists, and tabletop artists subreddits are great places to start looking for commission artists. I'll link them along with absolutely everything else in the description below. Finally, I highly recommend that you check out the official D&D Style Guide. This is a document sent to writers working on official D&D products that guides you how to write in the D&D style. If you plan on making homebrew or third-party content for 5th edition, writing in that common language is a really great idea. Not only does it mean you present the information in a way that the players are used to from the official books, but it also kind of forces you to think like a 5e designer and writer, and it will make your homebrew more like the official material, which, as I've said before on the channel, it's the best way to start. Get as close as you can to the official stuff, then start moving away. Which brings us finally to printing, which is one of the things a lot of you folks really wanted to know when I released my video on this campaign setting guide, is where I got it printed. Now, this advice is going to depend on where in the world you are, But here's how I went about getting this. First, you want to go ahead and search for booklet printing and include the size you're working with. This will pull up a bunch of different businesses that are able to print bound booklets. The reason I recommend searching for booklet printing and not book printing is when you search for book printing, you get a lot of kind of novel printing places and not places that are going to print in full color all the way to the margins for kind of booklets and magazines. A lot of these places that print things like this will also print big, full-page, hardcover books as well, but that will give you a starting point. If you're in the UK, I use a place called Mixam, which I've been using now both personally and professionally for about 6 years, and I've always had great experiences with them. This isn't sponsored by them in any way, they don't know I'm making this, but they do custom size printing and they have a ton of different options. So it's a great place to start your search. If you're struggling to find a local printing solution, then I recommend checking out DriveThruRPG. They have a whole bunch of printing options and you can print on demand, meaning you don't need to pay for a minimum quantity of books, which is something you have to do with a lot of other places. Now, every printing house is going to have their own specifications for what they want you to meet with things like bleed size or file types they accept. So if possible, try and find a print partner before you start working on your document, especially if you're working on something really big, because having to make small changes on a massive project way down the line is going to throw all kinds of chaos into the mix. Now, when it comes to sharing something like this, you've got plenty of options. You've got forums and Facebook groups and subreddits that you can post in. And if you're looking to earn some money from your homebrew, you can put it on places like DM's Guild or DriveThruRPG. Personally, I prefer DriveThruRPG because there's more variety there and you get to keep more of your money. But if you're making 5e content and you just want to share it, you're not worried about making money, then you'll probably get more eyes on it on DM's Guild. This video is sponsored in part by the Deck of Rumours. The Deck of Rumours takes one of the most classic fantasy tropes, the community notice board, and turns it into a series of card decks that the Dungeon Master and players alike can use to build a board filled with rumours and plot hooks to enrich your world. Entice your players with adventure or intrigue them with rumours of the goings on in the town. There are multiple decks available, including quest packs, gossip packs, and even nautical themed notices for those pirate inspired games. Each deck contains over 50 unique cards, complete with artwork of different flyers and notices, and they can be used individually or mixed together to create even more variety. I love this concept because the town notice board is such a staple of the genre, and having something physical to show the players and hand to them is going to be so much fun. And it's a really great way for them to keep track of their quests by kind of hanging on to the cards that they've picked up as well. The Kickstarter is running until the 24th of October, and you can pledge for digital or physical decks, and there's a whole bunch of add-ons available too. So head to the link in the description to check it out, and thanks again to Deck of Rumours for supporting the channel. I really hope that you found this video informative and it's made you want to create your own homebrew materials. If you think I've missed something or you've got any other resources to add or any questions, post them down in the comments and we can continue the discussion there. And if you haven't already, check out my video looking through my original homebrew campaign setting guide. But until next time, happy gaming.